Imagine a room, 7 feet by 12, a concrete box with a single window, 4 inches wide, angled so you can see a sliver of sky but nothing else. No trees, no buildings, no people, just a thin strip of gray or blue, depending on the weather. That window is your entire world. And you will sit in this room for 23 hours a day, every single day, for years, maybe decades, maybe the rest of your life. Now here's the thing most people get wrong about a place like this. They think the walls are what keep you inside. They think it is the guards, the razor wire, the reinforced steel doors that slam shut with a sound you feel in your chest. And sure, all of that is real, but none of it is the actual prison. The actual prison is what happens to your mind when every single thing that makes you human gets stripped away, one piece at a time, so slowly you do not even notice until it is too late. This is the story of ADX Florence, the most secure prison on American soil. The place they send you when every other prison in the federal system has given up on you. And the reason no one escapes is not what you think. ADX Florence sits in the high desert of Colorado, about 100 miles south of Denver. If you were driving past, you might not even notice it. It is low to the ground, built into the terrain, designed to disappear into the landscape. There is no towering wall like you see in movies, no Gothic architecture. From the outside, it looks like a particularly boring office park, the kind of place where nothing interesting has ever happened. That is by design. Everything about this facility is by design. It was built in 1994 after a series of violent incidents at other federal prisons made it clear that the existing system could not handle certain inmates. 2 guards had been killed at the United States Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. Attacks were escalating. The Bureau of Prisons needed a new solution, a facility specifically engineered to make violence, communication, and yes, escape physically impossible. So they built something that had never existed before. Not just a high-security prison, a place where the architecture itself is a form of control. The facility holds roughly 400 inmates, give or take, though the exact number fluctuates. And the roster reads like a who's who of the most dangerous and high-profile criminals in American history. Ramzi Youssef, the man behind the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, spent years here before his death. El Chapo was held here. Terry Nichols, who helped plan the Oklahoma City bombing. Robert Hansen, the FBI agent who spied for Russia for over 20 years. These are people the government has decided are too dangerous to exist in any normal prison population. Too dangerous to be near other inmates, too dangerous to be near guards, in some cases too dangerous to communicate with the outside world at all. ADX Florence is where you go when society has decided you need to be completely and utterly removed from it. But here is what makes this place different from any other maximum security facility. It is not just about keeping people in. It is about keeping everything out. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Sensory input, human contact, the passage of time, the things your brain needs to function. Let me take you inside, and you will start to understand what I mean. When a new inmate arrives at ADX, they are escorted through a series of steel doors and checkpoints. Each one closes behind you before the next one opens. You never see the person who opens the door. It is controlled remotely, from a room you will never enter and by people you will never meet. The hallways are designed so you cannot see more than a few feet in any direction. No long corridors, no line of sight to other cells. The architects studied the layouts of older prisons and identified every angle where one inmate might glimpse another. Then they eliminated all of them. Your cell is roughly 84 square feet. There is a concrete bed with a thin mattress, a concrete desk, a concrete stool bolted to the floor. A stainless steel toilet and sink combination, the kind you cannot break, no matter how hard you try. And believe me, people have tried. The door is solid steel, not bars. You cannot see out. There is a slot at the bottom for meal trays to slide through. You will eat every meal alone in your cell. The shower is in your cell too, controlled by a timer. You get roughly 10 minutes of water several times a week. The light in your cell is on for most of the day, and you cannot turn it off. At night it dims, but never goes fully dark. You do not control the light. You do not control the temperature. You do not control when you eat or when you sleep or when you get water. You control nothing. For 1 hour a day, you are allowed out of your cell for recreation. But recreation here does not mean what you are imagining. You are escorted alone to a slightly larger concrete room. Some inmates call it the dog run. It is maybe twice the size of your cell. The ceiling is partially open to the sky, covered with a grate. You can look up and see clouds. That is your outdoor time. You are alone in this room. There is nothing to do in this room. You stand there, or you pace, or you do push-ups, and then the hour is over and you go back. If you think this sounds manageable, that you could handle it, do a little workout, keep your mind sharp. Just wait, because what happens next is the part no one talks about. The first few days, maybe even the first few weeks, your brain treats this like a problem to solve. You are still you. You think about your case, your appeal, your family. You replay conversations, you make plans. Your mind is active and searching for stimulation the way it always has. You might talk to yourself. You might try to keep track of days by scratching marks on the wall, though they have ways of discouraging that too. You feel bored, you feel frustrated, but you feel, and that is the key word, you still feel like a person. If you like this kind of deep dive, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. It really does make a difference for the channel, and trust me, this story goes places you are not expecting. Around the second or third week, something shifts. Your brain, deprived of the constant input it has received every single day of your life since the moment you were born, starts to do something strange. It starts to make things up. This is not a metaphor. This is neuroscience. Your brain is a prediction machine. Every waking moment, it is taking in data from your senses, comparing it to what it expects, and updating its model of reality. When you take away the data, the machine does not stop. It just starts predicting based on nothing. And that is when the hallucinations begin. This has been studied extensively, not just in prisons, but in laboratory settings. In the 1950s, researchers at McGill University in Montreal conducted a series of experiments on sensory deprivation. They paid college students to lie in a small room, wearing translucent goggles that let in light but no shapes, and cotton gloves that reduced the sense of touch. The room had a constant low hum to mask any sounds. The students were told they just had to lie there. Easy money, right? Most of them could not last 3 days. Within 48 hours, the majority began experiencing vivid hallucinations. They saw geometric patterns, then landscapes, then people. Some heard voices, some felt things touching them that were not there. One student became convinced the room was filling with water. Their cognitive abilities tanked. Simple math problems became impossible. Their sense of time collapsed entirely. 2 hours felt like 8. 8 felt like 2. And these were healthy, stable college students who knew they could leave at any time. Now imagine you cannot leave. Imagine there is no end date. Imagine this is just your life now. At ADX Florence, inmates have reported the full spectrum. Voices that come from the walls. Shadows that move in the corners of cells that have no corners to cast shadows. One inmate described watching his hand move without deciding to move it. as if his body had become someone else's. Another said he could not tell the difference between being awake and being asleep because both states felt exactly the same. Time becomes meaningless, not in a poetic sense, in a clinical sense. The brain loses its ability to sequence events. Tuesday feels like it happened after Thursday, breakfast seems like it was days ago, or maybe it has not happened yet. You genuinely do not know. By the 3-month mark, something more fundamental changes. Your emotional range starts to compress. The frustration and anger from those first weeks fades, but it is not replaced by acceptance or peace. It is replaced by nothing, a kind of flat, gray emptiness that is not sadness, because sadness is still a feeling. This is the absence of feeling. Psychiatrists call it affective flattening. Your face stops making expressions. Your voice goes monotone. If someone told you your mother died, you would understand the words, but the information would not land anywhere inside you. You would process it the way you process the fact that it is Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever day it is. And here is the part that should genuinely disturb you. This is not a side effect. This is not an accident. This is what the architecture was designed to produce. Let me tell you about Tommy Silverstein. If you have never heard his name, that is because the government made sure of it. Silverstein was a convicted murderer who killed a correctional officer at Marion Penitentiary in 1983. After that, he was placed in solitary confinement, not for a month, not for a year, for the rest of his life. He spent the next 36 years from 1983 until his death in 2019 in continuous solitary confinement. That is the longest documented stretch of solitary for any inmate in the history of the American federal prison system. 36 years alone. Think about what has happened in the world in the last 36 years. The internet was invented. The Soviet Union fell. 2 towers came down. A black man became president. Smartphones changed how every human on the planet communicates. And for all of that, Tommy Silverstein sat in a concrete box talking to no one. Now, Silverstein was no innocent man. He killed multiple people. But what happened to him over those decades is documented, and it reads like a case study in the systematic destruction of a human mind. He developed severe anxiety disorders. He became unable to tolerate any human presence at all. When guards approached his cell, he would have panic attacks. The very contact he was deprived of became something he could no longer endure. He described the sensation of losing himself, of not knowing where he ended and the walls began. He painted, obsessively, hundreds of paintings. Art was one of the few things he was intermittently allowed, and he clung to it the way a drowning man clings to wood. Whether that constitutes proof of human resilience or evidence of how desperate a mind becomes for any output at all, I will let you decide. Silverstein is the extreme case, but he is not the exception in terms of what isolation does. Studies conducted on inmates released from long-term solitary confinement show consistent patterns. Cognitive decline, equivalent to moderate traumatic brain injury. Inability to make decisions, even simple ones like what to eat or which direction to walk. Hypersensitivity to stimulation, where a normal conversation feels like being shouted at. Many released inmates develop agoraphobia. They cannot handle open spaces. They cannot handle crowds. The freedom they are given back is a freedom their brain can no longer process. There was an inmate at ADX, his identity kept partially confidential, who was released after 14 years in the Supermax unit. Upon release to a lower security facility, he refused to leave his cell. Guards had to physically coax him out. When they brought him to the cafeteria, he sat in the corner facing the wall, covering his ears. Noise of other humans eating, talking, moving, clattering trays was so overwhelming that he vomited. He had to be reintroduced to human society gradually, over months, the way you might rehabilitate a feral animal. And even then, the staff who worked with him said he never fully came back. There was a blankness behind his eyes that never went away. This is the real security system. Not the walls, not the razor wire, not the motion sensors or the pressure pads in the floors or the cameras in every corridor. The real security system is time. Enough time in that box, and you are not the same organism that went in. Your brain has physically changed. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, decision-making, impulse control, all the things you would need to execute an escape, atrophies. It literally shrinks. Brain scans of long-term solitary confinement inmates show reduced gray matter volume in areas critical for executive function. You could hand these people a key to the front door, and many of them would not be able to formulate a plan to use it. Not because they do not want to leave, but because the part of the brain that turns want into plan into action has been eroded down to almost nothing. And this raises a question that I think is more important than any escape story. Is this justice? Because right now, as of today, there are tens of thousands of inmates in solitary confinement across the United States. The exact number is hard to pin down because different states define it differently, and some facilities use euphemisms: restrictive housing, special management unit, administrative segregation. But whatever you call it, the reality is the same. A person in a small room alone for 22 to 24 hours a day, for weeks or months or years. The United Nations has been explicit on this. The Mandela Rules, adopted in 2015, state that prolonged solitary confinement, defined as more than 15 consecutive days, constitutes cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. Beyond that threshold, the risk of permanent psychological damage becomes significant. The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has gone further, saying that in many cases, prolonged solitary meets the legal definition of torture under international law. 15 days, that is the line the United Nations draws. Tommy Silverstein spent 13,140 days past that line, roughly 36 years past it. And he was not the only one. There are inmates at ADX Florence right now who have been in solitary for over a decade. Some of them will die there in that cell, having not touched another human being in years. The defenders of the system make arguments that are not entirely without merit. These are, in many cases, genuinely dangerous people. People who have killed guards, people who have organized attacks from inside prison, people who have put hits on witnesses from behind bars. What do you do with someone who is a lethal threat to everyone around them? You cannot just put them in general population and hope for the best. The prison system has a duty of care to its staff and to other inmates. Solitary confinement exists, the argument goes, because the alternative is worse, and there is a logic to that. It is a cold logic, but it is a logic. But here is where it falls apart. If the goal is to make these people less dangerous, solitary confinement does not do that. It does the opposite. Studies consistently show that inmates released from long-term solitary are more violent, more unstable, more likely to reoffend than those who served equivalent sentences in general population. You take a dangerous person, you destroy their ability to regulate emotion, you strip away their capacity for empathy, and then you release them into the world. How does that make anyone safer? It is like treating a burn patient by putting them back in the fire. The system creates the very thing it claims to prevent. There is a deeper issue here too, and it is one most people do not want to think about. Solitary confinement is not reserved only for the most dangerous of the dangerous. Across the country, it is used for inmates with mental illness because they are disruptive, for inmates who are suicidal because they might hurt themselves, for juvenile offenders for their own protection, for transgender inmates because the system does not know where else to put them. The tool that was supposedly designed for the absolute worst cases has become a default management strategy, and it is applied to people who are vulnerable, not people who are threats. That is not a security measure. That is a system failing the people it is supposed to manage. But let us come back to ADX Florence specifically, because there is one more thing that makes this place uniquely disturbing, and it is the thing I have been building toward this entire video. The genius, if you can call it that, of ADX Florence is not that it prevents escape through physical barriers, though it does. It is not that it prevents communication between inmates, though it does that too. The genius is that it makes the concept of escape irrelevant. After enough time in that facility, the question is not, can you escape? The question is whether there is still a you left to do the escaping. The walls do not keep the body in, they dissolve the person. And an empty shell does not run. There was a psychologist who evaluated inmates transitioning out of ADX. He described the experience of interviewing long-term solitary inmates as unlike anything else in clinical psychology. He said that with most patients, even severely traumatized ones, you can find a thread, a memory, a desire, a fear, something that connects them to who they were. With these inmates, after a certain number of years, the thread was gone. Not buried, not suppressed, gone. He compared it to trying to have a conversation with someone who had a severe stroke. The body was there, the voice worked, but the person behind it had been fundamentally altered. Not dead, because dead implies there was once something alive, erased. Like a hard drive that has been wiped so many times the magnetic surface itself is degraded. I want you to sit with that for a second. Because the instinct, the normal human instinct, when you hear about a prison no one can escape from, is to feel impressed, maybe a little thrilled. We love stories about unbeatable systems. We love the idea of the ultimate lock, the perfect cage. There is something satisfying about it. But that satisfaction depends on imagining that the person inside is still a person. A cunning, dangerous person, sure, but a full human being who is being outsmarted by the architecture, that is the fantasy. The reality is that the architecture is not outsmarting anyone, it is unmaking them. And there is nothing satisfying about that. If this video made you think about something differently, or if it raised a question you did not have before, leave it in the comments. I read every single one of them, and honestly, the conversations on videos like this are sometimes more interesting than the video itself. And if you want to keep going down this rabbit hole, I have got something coming next that takes this idea in a direction you genuinely will not expect. Hit subscribe so you do not miss it. I started this video by saying the walls are not what keep people inside ADX Florence, and now you know what I meant. The walls are concrete and steel and razor wire, and they are formidable, and they have never been breached. But the real containment system is silence. It is emptiness. It is the slow, invisible, perfectly legal destruction of a human brain through the removal of everything that brain needs to survive. It is the most effective prison ever built, not because no one can get out, but because after enough time inside, there is no one left to try. And the most disturbing part, there are people in that building right now, today, as you listen to this, sitting in those cells, staring at that 4-inch window, watching that sliver of sky. And some of them have been doing it so long that if you opened the door right now, they would not walk through it. Not because they do not want to, because they have forgotten how to want.